All right, welcome back to the BMX Commentator podcast, episode 21. And believe it or not, we have another Australian guest on the show today. It seems to be a theme at the minute, bringing all the Australians on, but we get them on because we know we're going to get an absolutely banging conversation out of them. And this guest is no different. I'm pretty sure we'll have a really good chat and find out some things we never knew before. So bring it on to the podcast, episode 21, Mr. Jayce Cunning. Jayce, how are you, sir?
I'm great, thank you. Thank you for having me on. I'm stoked to be here and have a chat with you.
Yeah. And it's a bit of a weird one, actually, because normally everybody that I get on the podcast is somebody that I've met before at like a World Cup or something like that. And you're the first guest I've got on where I can say we've never actually met in person. So we're almost getting to know each other live on the show as we go along. So it's definitely going to be an interesting one.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I don't think you were commentating when I was doing World Cups and stuff. Like, I haven't done that many, but when I was at them, I don't think you were commentating. So this will be fun.
Yeah, because that was one of the things I wanted to ask you about, actually, doing what your history with the World Cups was and that kind of stuff. Because I started on them in 2018 with Dr. Jason Richardson on BMX Live TV. So your World Cup history, we might as well start there. How did that come about? What is your World Cup history for BMX?
I actually don't have that much, to be honest. I did my first World Cup. I'd have to say it was 2015. I was still junior elite, but it was back when, yeah, obviously there was only junior elite, and World Cups was obviously one class. So I was still only 17, and my first one was actually in Manchester in the UK. And I got absolutely smoked. And then after that, I focused on racing in America and did all the racing over there. And then I did the World Cups in Australia at the start of 2020, and they were the last ones I did as well.
Yeah. So just a few, but certainly got some experience in, that's for sure. So your first one was Manchester 2015. Who were you in with in that particular World Cup? Who did you race? Can you remember?
I remember having a moto with Sam Willoughby. I had a moto with Mara Strombergs. They were probably the two that stood out to me, just because obviously, like back in 2015, they were two of the top names in the sport. And I just remember getting on the gate with them when I was 17, and I was like, felt tiny. And Manchester track was scary enough as it was. Like, the track was gnarly, and just the week leading up to it, riding there was like intimidating on its own, let alone getting on the gate with those guys and another six riders beside us. So it was eye opening. It was super fun, but it was definitely terrifying at the same time.
Yeah. I think that track's still terrifying now, to be quite honest. I know a lot of people, say that they don't feel like they could actually race a World Cup there anymore because it's almost too small for the speeds that everybody's going. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, for sure. I think even back then it was like, I think they managed it well, but I think even back then the track was pretty gnarly to go. Like, for the top 8 guys on a day at a World Cup to go full speed into those like corners and stuff. And like 2015, the track was like, had that huge step up on the second straight, and it was super gnarly. So I would say the way the sport's progressed in the last 9 years or so, it would definitely be way too small to race there now.
Yeah.
I heard that they were getting rid of it though. Is that true?
Not that I've heard. As long as BMX is in the Olympics, that track's still going to be in place because it'll be part of our Olympic program. So I certainly have
Right.
haven't heard anything to that effect. And I was there literally the other day, so it's still standing at the moment. So at least we've got
Yeah,
somewhere
right.
warm
I
and
don't
dry.
know.
Yeah, got somewhere warm and dry to race over the winter, which is always a plus for us in the UK because we're not
Yeah,
blessed
that's
enough
for
to have
sure.
the Australian weather. So
It is not
yeah,
good weather at the moment. It is everywhere's flooded. We haven't been riding. Everything's wet.
really, is that
But
true?
that's what summer's like over here. Lots of
Oh,
rain.
okay. So that kind of leads me on to Australian tracks in general. Certainly, you've posted a couple of videos lately on your YouTube channel saying that, this is one of the best tracks I've ever ridden. This track's amazing. How are tracks in Australia compared to the rest of the world? Because you have done a little bit of traveling.
I think compared to Europe, I feel like technical, technical and difficulty wise, we're probably still like a little bit behind. I'd say we're ahead of America when it comes to track difficulty and depth and all that kind of stuff. But I feel like some tracks are progressing that way, and then some are quite the opposite. So as a whole, it's all over the place. Like we have some tracks here that are probably like the flattest, smallest tracks I've ever ridden, and then some that nowadays are getting like super good and like pretty technical and super fun to ride. But all those ones that I put up recently are a fair way from my house, so I don't really get to ride them much. But my local track got rebuilt not that long ago, and it's super good now, and our club's growing, and the track's not super difficulty, but it's a fast track, and the surface and everything's super good, so it works out well.
Okay. What's the local then for you? Give them a shout while you're on. Let's find out about your local scene.
Hinterland BMX Club, and it's one of them clubs. It struggled for a lot of years in the track. There was actually a period for probably like 7 years where I was a member of a track more towards Brisbane. It was called Caboolture because our track was like never really running. But there's like a great committee there now, a super good group of people that are always like keeping on top of the track maintenance, and the club's growing. The rider interest seems to be growing, and that's where I do all my coaching and stuff as well. So it's super good out there right now.
Okay. So you're just coaching the local kids and stuff and giving a bit back?
Yeah, I have like a pretty big coaching setup at the moment, and I coach a fair few people online all around Australia and a couple overseas as well.
Oh, right. Okay, cool. Fantastic. I didn't know that. So that's yeah, certainly getting your brand out there. I think the YouTube channels definitely help that. I mean, I discovered your channel probably maybe a year ago, I think, maybe a little bit longer than that. I think I'd watched episodes on and off across like a period of a few years, but I think I subscribed probably about 12 months ago. And one of the things I do like about what you do is the fact that you are very consistent with your uploads, or you seem to be very consistent anyway. I try
to be.
Yeah, I try and be consistent with this podcast as well, but it doesn't quite work like that all the time. But I do the best I can. What's been the kind of most unexpected thing that's happened as a result of you having a YouTube channel?
Oh wow. I've never been asked anything like that. I would probably say the amount of sponsorship opportunities I've got from the media side of things and nothing to do with racing, if that makes sense. I think before I started doing the YouTube and started focusing on social media and stuff like that, I never realized the amount of opportunities that you could get that didn't involve just having to go to racing all the time and slogging out training and trying to win, and more like diverting towards like the educational side and helping riders and kind of growing a name like that, which is something that like Barry Nobles, for instance, is really good at the moment. And I think, yeah, it's probably just like small random opportunities like that. And I just have like a huge passion for like the sport of BMX, and I really want to grow the sport. So covering it and trying to create some sort of media around the sport is like super exciting to me. And I was actually talking with one of the Oz cycling officials today about trying to cover the sport better in future years, and I'm going to try and like take a step towards more of a role like that of trying to educate more of the public and people on the background of riders and like kind of spotlight it a little bit more.
Okay. So, like, are you talking educating people about the personalities of the sport, the top riders? Is that what you're thinking of? Am I thinking right there?
Yeah. And like make in Australia, especially like the pros are very just like mixed in with the kids. So it's almost like the pros aren't put on a pedestal enough that the kids have people to look up to, because they're kind of just mixed in on race days. So kids are out the back eating and resting and warming down, warming up, whatever they're doing while the pros are on track. And I feel like when I was growing up and a lot of my peers were growing up, the pros would almost race separate. So we'd get to stand on the sidelines and watch them race, and we would almost take more notice. Whereas I feel like these days it's very just mixed in, and no, half the time, like kids I coach and stuff, I'll mention top pros these days and they got no idea who they even are.
Right. Oh, okay. Yeah, I can kind of understand that, because you know, they're busy kind of doing their own thing, aren't they? And, you know, they finish their lap and like you said, they go off, they have a drink, they cool down, whatever it might be. And some kids are just focused on their own racing and not massively au fait with the elite riders. And we have a similar thing over here in the UK in that, you know, the elites, our elite class is just grossly underrepresented and it's nowhere near where it should be. Prize money's nowhere where it should be. I mean, we could go on about that for hours and hours. But yeah, I think we do need to build a sport where there is a pinnacle to aspire to. I'm not talking in the same vein as soccer, because obviously there's a lot more money in that sport, but at least have kids who have a desire to one day maybe be pro because they can see it as a viable career path, I suppose is the best way to describe it. Is that a similar sort of thing that you were thinking?
Yeah, for sure. And I grew up racing motocross, and I have followed Supercross since I was like 4 years old. So looking at sports like that, I think like obviously they're the pros in Supercross and motocross are put on a pedestal, and kids watch them every weekend, and then they have their own races, and it's like their goals are to be like the Chad Reeds and James Stewarts and Jet Lawrence and stuff like that. And they have something to look up to. Whereas I feel like BMX pros aren't put on a pedestal enough to have almost those goals, if that makes sense. And I think the Grands does a great job with the Pro Spectacular where everyone comes into the arena and watches, but I think it's a little bit of a far-fetched thing when it only happens really once a year or twice a year when you have the Worlds as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Grands, like you say, it's like the Worlds in that you will actually sit and watch all that races. I can't even begin to imagine how many hours of racing I watched over the Grands weekend. It was like almost, I don't know why, I ended up sat there on a Friday night and I'm watching the intermediate mains and I'm thinking to myself, why am I sat here watching this? But it's because it was the Grands and there was that level of excitement. And like you say, it doesn't happen often enough. So, but I'm sure there's a discussion to be had to how to bring BMX to that particular level.
Yeah, definitely. I went down to our Supercross track today to ride, and it was raining, and that's when I started talking to one of the old cycling guys, and we went on a discussion for about 2.5 hours about how we could highlight those areas of the sport more to make it more like something that people desire or somewhere people want to eventually get to.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a difficult one to answer. I think your other side of what you do with the mountain bike stuff and the Crankworx stuff, I think they're probably more aligned towards that personality building side of things as a sport than BMX is. Do you think that's a fair shout?
Definitely. I think as well, even when we're racing Crankworx, we'll have like little mid-race interviews where the commentators will just come up and ask us questions on the live stream, and and I think yeah, they definitely bring out the personalities of the riders with the way that they do the live stream and have like different people doing different sections. And when we go away to events in Rotorua and stuff, they'll have we'll have like filming days where we'll go film going whitewater rafting or people go jumping out of a plane and stuff. And it's like it's an advertisement for the place where we're racing and the things and activities you can do in those places. But throughout those videos, they find a way to bring out the personality of the riders so that when the live stream goes on and we've got our helmets on, people have kind of learnt something about us in the introduction. And then it's like, in a way, they can find people that they like and like root for them. Whereas I feel like in BMX, there's not enough of that. So everyone kind of just watches, and it's almost like there's no passion as to who people are going for.
Yeah, I can understand where that comes from. I think because obviously Crankworx is a Red Bull event, and it's on Red Bull TV, who I'd love to work for, hint, hint. Yeah, I think they are, you know, very much kind of aligned with being able to tell a story about the athletes and that kind of stuff. And that's something that might come into, you know, BMX racing a little bit further down the line, but certainly Red Bull do that very, very well on the Crankworx coverage. So for you, when did mountain biking actually enter your kind of career? When did you make the conscious decision to do some mountain bike stuff as well as BMX?
It was, oh wow. I think when I was 15, I did a mountain bike race and I loved it. And then it was like I just never ended up buying a bike, so I never did it again. And then when pump track started becoming a thing, they had a pump track nationals in Australia and no one knew about it. And I seen that it like came up and like a guy I knew won it and it was just like held at the mountain bike nationals. So then the following year I kind of found out more about it and then went and raced. And I was fortunate enough to win my first Australian title at the first pump track nationals I did. And off the back of that, the following year, or maybe it was later that year, was the first time that Crankworx was coming to Australia. So I ended up getting an invite for the Crankworx that was in Cairns. And I just went and did that. And I only rode pump track. That was the only event I was invited for and the only event I did. And I was also lucky enough to win my first Crankworx. So then from there on, the organizers were basically like, you can do kind of whatever disciplines you want and you can come to whatever Crankworx rounds you want. And it was just like such a good event and so much fun. And everyone there was like so awesome and everyone had a great time. And I was like, why would I not want to continue going to these? So I kind of, right before the next one I was going to go to in New Zealand, I broke my shoulder blade. So I didn't go. But then the following year, I ended up doing every stop and yeah, it was a blast. And that's kind of how I fell into mountain biking. And I'm just kind of taking it one day at a time.
Yeah, yeah. How good is Crankworx from an athlete's perspective? Because obviously you're lucky enough to do Crankworx and you've done some World Cups. If there's something that BMX can take away from the Crankworx setup in terms of athlete experience, what do you think that might be?
I think it's probably just how the athletes are treated as a whole. And I think athletes in any sport will always have something to say about something that's essentially not being done right or how they're not being treated right. But in Crankworx, like we're very well looked after. If you're like an invited rider, you don't pay for any entries or anything like that. You get access to the Red Bull Athlete Zone where we have like food supplied, water supplied, a full tent lounge area. At some of the rounds, there's like an F1 simulator set up and like all these different activities and stuff in the Red Bull Athlete Zone for us to do to occupy ourselves throughout the day. And then it's an event as well where the officials and the riders are very like tight knit and close. So it's like it's not almost like you're competing with each other. It's like the officials will just come and talk to us while we're practicing and ask us questions about the track or how things are. And it kind of just is like very seamless and everyone there just seems like buddies. So it makes the whole experience definitely a lot more chill.
Okay. Okay. Certainly food for thought there for the BMX side of things. Do you think, because obviously BMX we're a bit more rigid in that with it being an Olympic discipline now, that there might not be room for that level of relaxation, shall we say? If you were to take maybe 1 to 2 things from your Red Bull Crankworx experience and go, those are the 2 critical things that you need to shoehorn into BMX racing, what do you think those 1 or 2 things might be if you were to pick maybe 1 or 2?
Oh, wow. Probably the amount that the officials and event organizers take the riders' words into consideration. And
Okay.
and probably just like the off-track support, I think.
Okay.
I feel like I know World Cups, a lot of people are country funded or have country areas, but like even World Cups, like my first World Cup when I was 17, we were just like jammed in the corner under the start hill at Manchester because we had nowhere to sit or anything. And like riders that aren't a part of a country and stuff, I feel like, well, back when I was doing them, it was kind of just like you were just left to fend for yourself.
Yeah, yeah. I actually had that conversation with Drew Polk as well when he was at Brisbane and Rotorua, and they were like, him and a couple of other guys were almost just sat on a curb in the
Yeah.
pits, just, you know, looking after themselves basically. And I'm like, you're supposed to be elite athletes. They must, you know, there must be something somewhere where you could sit. And he just said it was just so busy and so crowded, they just had to go and find themselves a little corner somewhere and look after themselves. So I totally understand where you're coming from with that one.
And
So
I think obviously we don't, not everyone knows the ins and outs of everything that the World Cup organizers and stuff go through. But I think when they see that at every round, surely there's a way to get I think they have tent spaces now for riders that aren't on national teams, but surely there's a way that they can just like double the size of that or something, so everyone can be comfortable and have like these guys are racing at the top level in the sport and essentially like promoting the sport by being on the gate on the live stream and that kind of stuff, and they don't even have a place to sit.
yeah, I'm sure there's, like I say, I'm sure there's an element of that that's provided, but like, you know, maybe they could just take it to the next level or something like that. I'm sure that's the kind of thing that gets fed back to the powers that be on a regular basis. So it'd be interesting to see if they listen to that kind of stuff. The Crankworx experience, you said you got that first invite. I'm curious to know, how does that first invite to Crankworx turn up? Do you just get an envelope in the post? Do you get an email? Does somebody rock up with a banner and say you've won? How's that work?
It was just an email, but it was kind of funny because the email came through and I was actually in Emerald, which is like a little country town in Queensland, the state that I live in, and we're building a BMX track. And that email came in and I got invited, and it was like something that I'd wanted to do for years and years. And I think when I was like 15 years old and I first watched Crankworx, I wrote into one of my books that a goal of mine was to get a Crankworx medal. And just like seeing that email after like a day of like slogging our asses building a BMX track, it was like such a cool feeling. And then that's all I like focused on from then until I went and raced. But it was a very like cool moment, just like after so many years of wanting it and then just getting an invite like felt so sick to me.
Yeah. So you go from getting that first invite and you've had, what is it, 3 Crankworx gold medals you've had now? Is that correct?
Yeah, I've had three golds, a silver, and a bronze.
Right. So you've got a fairly decent collection of metalwork there. So on that basis, then, what's worth more to a sponsor, like Crankworx medals like that, or World Cup wins? How does that translate to you being better funded, better treated, better deals, whatever, from sponsors? Do they really latch onto that kind of thing?
Yeah, I think so. But I think sponsors latch onto Crankworx because of how well it's covered by media. I've obviously never had a World Cup win, so I don't know. Like, I can't compare those. But when it comes to like Crankworx, like even the opportunities I kind of got and people that reached out as soon as I won my first gold was crazy. And then, but then I think just like the whole learning about sponsorship and stuff in Crankworx was a whole different ball game to sponsorship in BMX, and how much more money the companies and stuff were dealing with, and how much importance they put onto media, and how much like companies are spending on media just at Crankworx rounds and stuff is like it's completely different to BMX. And I think that's also something we could definitely learn from on the BMX side of things.
Okay. What was the most surprising offer that you got after doing Crankworx then? Was there anything where you just thought, wow, I thought XYZ person would never approach me, or I got an offer from those and I had thought, oh, I can't really take that, or whatever it might be? Was there anybody who came and approached you after that and gone, wow, I did not expect that to come through?
I think it was more on the post-race interview when I won. They said, "Will we see you in Rotorua?" And I said, "Probably not," because I didn't actually plan on going. And I was like, it was kind of like a fast turnaround back then because they were getting the schedule back in order after COVID and stuff. So I was like, no, I probably won't be there. And then it was actually Sam Moore from Fist Gloves reached out to me straight away. And he was like, just let me know how much money you need. We'll send you over. And that's just like something that seems like unheard of in BMX. But he just reached out straight away, and it wasn't even like he didn't even like think about it. He was just like, let me know what you need and we'll send you straight over. And then I ended up breaking my shoulder blade, and he still like supported the whole thing. And I was like, do you want me to like send the money back? What do you want? And he was just like, no. He's like, you've done everything I've asked of you. Like, you're sweet.
That's amazing. That's so
Yeah.
nice to hear. Yeah. Yeah. So certainly people are keen to support you as an athlete. So other than that, what is the best part for you of being what I would describe as a two-sport athlete? What does having both sides of the coin bring to you, do you think, as a rider?
I think BMX, obviously, I feel like you can't get better fundamental skills and stuff, and like the basics of growing up racing BMX, I think help you with everything, and learning how to be so specific and accurate on a bike that doesn't have suspension and stuff can definitely translate well. So I think that crosses over well in that aspect, but then I'm still like I still struggle a lot with the mountain bike side of things with dirt corners, and I got no idea how to set suspension up or any of that stuff. And then the opposite way, I think the whole how mountain biking's run, how sponsorship on that side of things run, how important they take media, I can almost take back to BMX and try and, in a way, change the BMX landscape of that side of the sport.
Okay. Okay. That sounds reasonable. So with that in mind then, on your YouTube channel, how do you see your YouTube channel progressing then, let's say over the next 12 months?
I'm sitting in an office with Jackson right now, who does a lot of my film work, and we were literally just talking about this. I want to try and make it a lot more educational, but I'm I pride myself on finding the details and a lot of things that people wouldn't pick up on when it comes to coaching and stuff. So I want to try and make my YouTube a lot more educational without kind of throwing stuff out there that people may regurgitate without knowing my true meaning behind it, if that makes sense. Um,
Yeah.
so I wanna kind of break down certain things I've learned over the years and how people can implement that into their training or whatever. Because I've always been a very calculated person, and I always like think into things super deeply. So even if like I haven't been out there winning World Cups and stuff, but when it comes to bike setups and training modalities and stuff like that, I'll break down everything and try and figure out what is the best way to do things. So I want to try and definitely pivot towards more education on my YouTube
Okay.
channel.
Right. Okay. So given that is where you're kind of heading, what do you think is the most misunderstood part of BMX training, BMX skill building, anything like that? Do you think there's anything out there where you just go, so many people get that wrong, they could do that so much better? What do you think the first thing that springs to mind might be for that?
Um, I think I think it's just probably like a simple one for me is how many people take the sport serious at such a young age.
Yeah.
And I think myself especially, like when it comes to skills, I know I'm a very skillful rider, and a lot of people compliment me on how skillful I am. But as a kid, all I did was just ride my bike every afternoon, all the time. And I think even a lot of people that come to me for coaching and stuff always think that there's like a secret to being able to get these skills. And I'm like, there's no secret other than getting on your bike like every day and just trying and trying and trying, and you'll figure out ways that work and ways that don't. I was like, because I can sit here and tell you everything that you need to do, but until you feel it within your own body, you're never going to understand what you're trying to feel when you go across a jump or through a corner or out of the gate. So I think that's probably the biggest one. And then when people are more serious, I think they don't understand how little pros actually train. um, I think everyone thinks that elite athletes train all the time, and I've spent a lot of time with like Isaac Kennedy and Rico and these guys, and it's like the little amount, like they train very intense, but it's not as often as people think. And I think like kids growing up think they need to train twice, three times a day, every day, and It's like these guys are training a lot less than you think.
Okay, so it's more a quality over quantity type of scenario. So train hard, rest hard.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And
That's definitely interesting, because I certainly see that kind of on our local scene, that certain kids will be at the track 4 times a week and in the gym 3 times a week, and that kind of stuff. And sometimes it's, I think, just enthusiasm for the sport that makes them train more, but kind of to almost take it slightly slower to go faster is certainly a mindset that people need to keep in mind. So yeah, it's interesting that you've come at
for
it
sure.
from that scenario. What's, with that in mind then, what's the most surprising thing that you've seen with a professional rider training that other people might not know about? Is there something where you go, I can't believe person XYZ did that? Is there anything along those lines?
Oh wow. Um,
I'm coming
I
out
don't
with all the
know.
random questions today.
Yeah, you are. These are good questions though. I don't know about that one. I think from a broader perspective and just like what pros do compared to what other people do, I would say just how simple they train. But I can't really think of one specific rider that's done something like that. There's definitely been times where I've seen pros do certain things and I'm like, I don't really like understand your purpose behind that or what you're trying to achieve out of that. But there's probably things that I've done in the past as well that people have thought the same thing. But I think
Yeah,
I think just as a whole, I think pros are just very the stuff they do is just very simple, but they're very consistent and their intensity is correct, which I think a lot of people don't understand.
right. Okay. So making sure that training's as intense as it needs to be for the phase that you're in, I think is probably the best way to describe that.
Yeah, exactly. And then I think a lot of people don't understand that like your body adapts to the training you're doing when you're resting. So if you're just training all the time, your body's just constantly playing catch up. And I have people at coaching as well, and they'll come to me and be like, I've been sick for 3 weeks, but I came back faster. And I'm like, yeah, that's because your body finally had a chance to let everything kind of like set in and like do what it needed to do. And now you're quicker. But before that, you were just thrashing yourself day in, day out and never got anywhere.
Okay. Yeah. So BMX dads of the world, take notes. Your kids need a
Yeah.
rest every now and again. So
Yeah.
take it from a man who knows. I've got a couple of other questions, just kind of more um, general questions that just give people a bit more of an idea of the things that you like and dislike. So who has been your favorite pro rider to race against, either in BMX, mountain bike, both? Is there anybody that you line up against and go, do you know what, I absolutely love racing this guy?
Um, in mountain biking, I would probably say Bass Van Steenbergen. He's like one of my best mates at Crankworx and stuff, and he's just like a legend of a guy. And growing up, he was a huge name in the sport, and I like kind of always looked at him from afar and looked up to him. And then when I got onto Crankworx, my first ever Crankworx, we became super good mates, and then we've basically stayed with each other at every single Crankworx since. And it was like a pretty surreal thing for me when we became mates and that. But racing with him super fun, and it's like if he beats me or I beat him, we're both just stoked to be there riding bikes together. So that's always a good thing.
Yeah.
And
Did
then
Baz?
in
Oh, sorry.
no, you're right.
I was just going to say, did Baz race the Grands a couple of years ago? Am I right in thinking that?
Last year when Spico asked me to go over Bass, I was talking to Bass and I was like, "You should just come do it." And then yeah, he came with Hyper.
Brilliant. Brilliant.
Yeah, it
Anyway,
was super fun.
I cut you off there right in the middle of a story about Baz, so please carry on. I do apologize.
Oh, I can't remember. Um,
It's late. It's been a long day,
I
mate.
don't know.
We'll
But yeah,
just crack on.
he's just like a legend, and like that coming to Grands, he's just like he just loves riding bikes. He's a super hard worker, and there's just like I don't think anyone could say anything bad about the guy.
Yeah, good. That's nice to hear, especially if you can do it on both bikes like you can. That's for sure. Next question. If you had a dream race to go to anywhere in the world, maybe a race you've not been to, a race you want to go back to, a race you'd want to create for yourself, what would that dream race be, or where would you like to go? What would be the ultimate dream race?
Oh wow. I don't know about dream. I think like those indoor races in France look sick. Like they look like they're like is it the Cane Indoor, or I'm probably
Yeah,
pronouncing that very wrong, but um like those ones look super cool. Just like it looks like it's a huge event and there's like a ton of riders and stuff, and it almost just looks like a European Grands. But I really want to race or just go ride at least in South America. I
right.
feel like
Okay.
some of the tracks down there look like they look very rough around the edges, but they look so epic to ride.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
almost like the tracks are just like built gnarly with a lot of like technical stuff, but then it's like they just don't mow the grass.
Yeah, I'm sure there's undiscovered gems in that part of the world as far as tracks go. So I can
Yeah,
totally understand where you're coming from with that. And just going back to what you were saying about the French indoors, like Caen, Saint Etienne, Avignon, all those kinds. I've been to a few of them over the years, particularly Saint Etienne, and they are an epic race to go to. If you get the chance, just definitely go, because French indoor races are just brilliant. I haven't got a clue what's going on half of the time outside of the actual racing itself, but my
yeah,
God, absolutely awesome events to go to. So yeah, I'm definitely with you on that one.
yeah.
So
They
that's a
definitely they look sick, and like the tracks that they build there sometimes look so epic, and then they asphalt the corners and everything for like just a track that they pop up, which I find so cool. Like the amount of effort that they go to.
yeah, the one that they had in Avignon about, I don't know, 4 or 5 weeks ago, whatever it was, that track, like you say, tarmac corners looked absolutely amazing. And I'm thinking, we can't put a track like that together to be permanently in like one place in the UK. People are struggling to get
Yeah.
tracks built, and then they go in and they build that for a weekend. If that was at a local, I'd be absolutely just over the moon. I'd never be away from the
Oh,
place. Do you know what I mean?
it's insane. I look at those tracks and then I look at like there's some tracks around here that are like pretty new or just like freshly built, and then it's like these tracks in France and even the Grands track and stuff just like kind of pop up in a couple days, and it's like better than these permanent ones we've got. And but I feel like that is almost a problem of trying to build the permanent tracks too perfectly that it goes the other way.
Right. Okay.
I feel like they try fine tune things too much so that they make it too mellow or they overthink certain jumps. Whereas those indoor tracks, I feel like they just like build it and they're like, we've only got a race on it for a couple of days, who cares? But it ends up
Yeah.
being epic.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's definitely down to the skill of the French track builders. And as we all know, French tracks are pretty much the best in the world in terms of like day-to-day racing and that kind of stuff. So, I have a friend in the
Yeah,
States who every time he sees a French track, he's like, I can't believe you've got those tracks over there. You're so lucky. You've got those within traveling distance, and we've got this piece of crap round the corner that we can't ride, and that kind of stuff.
yeah.
So yeah, I think the French do it really,
Oh,
really well.
the French tracks look insane. Like I would love to go ride there. There's just something about the rough around the edges of South America that I love.
Yeah. Brilliant. Brilliant.
But the French tracks do look good.
They do. They do. I agree. And like I said, I would love to go back to France again and do a week's riding or something like that. I don't know if my body would take a week's riding down there, but certainly mentally I could properly get into it and enjoy it. So
Yeah.
next question. Have you had a race where you think that's the one that got away? Which is the race that you think got away and you would like to have a do-over of?
Probably 2015 Junior Elite Worlds in Zolder, Belgium. It
Okay,
was
how did that go?
we I don't actually remember what I got out in. I think I got out in like quarters, but my prep leading up to that race was awesome. Um, Well, it was kind of like a long story leading up. I broke my arm at the start of the year, so I missed all of the rounds to get selected. And then at the national title, my only chance to get selected for Worlds was to get top 3. And I was coming third in the final and crashed in the last corner. And I kind of just like thought that like my dream of going to Worlds in Junior Elite was over because I was already second year. And then someone I think got injured and they put me in. And then we went to Belgium, and in the time trials I rode really well and got 8th. And I was like, I felt awesome on my bike, and I was more of a racer than a time trialist. So I was like super excited to go racing in that. And then the 2015 Worlds, it poured rain and we got moved down to the 5 meter and rode in the pouring rain. And in Australia, we don't ride in the rain much. So my whole day was just a mess from the start.
Yeah, Zolder Worlds 2015, one of the most epic worlds I think we've ever had for that exact reason.
Yeah, but I just think like I think I almost went in with like my mind too tunnel vision on one thing, and then when it like got changed to the 5 meter hill and it was raining and all these different elements got thrown in, I was just like overwhelmed, and I'd kind of just like almost like shrugged my shoulders and just been like, all the prep and everything I did was kind of for nothing, even though we still had a race. And I think that's where it all went wrong. But it would be like that. That would be the one race where I'd love to give it another crack because I definitely felt great that year.
Yeah, right. Okay. Interesting answer for sure. And then I've got a new question that I've never asked anybody else before on one of these podcasts, and I'm calling it the Frankenstein BMXer question. So you've got
the name.
Are you ready for this one? So you've got the opportunity.
So.
You've got the opportunity to take the physical strength of one rider, the bike handling skills of another rider, the mental strength of a rider, and the social media skills of a rider, and put them all together. Which riders would you pick for those 4 categories?
1 second. I got to write this down. So the first one was the mental strength?
Yeah, the physical strength. So you can have the physical strength of any rider.
Physical strength, yep.
Yeah, you
What
can
was the
have
second one?
The bike handling skill of another rider.
Bike skill, yep.
Yeah. The toughness of another rider.
Mental strength, yep.
Yeah, and the social media skill of a rider, and add them all together to make the ultimate rider. Who are the 4 riders that you're picking to make the Frankenstein rider? You can tell I've thought about this.
Yeah, you have. This is a hard one on the spot. Physical strength. I'll probably go with Isaac Kennedy.
Okay.
He is a beast. This is actually his Olympic bike right here.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, I'm in his brother's office. His brother and my sister are married, so.
Ah, right. Okay.
And obviously Isaac lives in America, so his Olympic bike just sits here.
Right. So you've got the family connection.
Yeah. And then his brother does all our media stuff. So I would say Isaac Kennedy for physical strength.
Okay.
For bike skill, probably. Oh, wow. I'm trying to think of people that. Oh, Josh Jolly.
Right.
Definitely.
So we're definitely going Australian with this Frankenstein rider then.
Well, no. Well, mental strength, I've got to go with Joris.
Yeah.
I've never seen anyone that is as consistent as him day in, day out, or like. Well, is he the only person that's ever had an undefeated European season?
I believe so. Yeah, I think Maris Stromberg's might have done it, but if there is anybody else, it'll only be Maris. There's only Maris and Joris that I can think of. I'm sure somebody out there will correct me if I'm wrong.
I think like just the mental strength to be able to do full years in the US and stuff and win all them titles, plus win multiple world titles, handle it at the Olympics in front of a French crowd. I don't think anyone's more mentally strong than him. And then social media, I feel like it's just a no-brainer to go with Barry Nobles.
Yeah, yeah, I'd be inclined to agree with that as well.
Yeah, and I
So,
feel like Jackson was just Isaac's brother. He just went and filmed for Chase at Grands, and he said the amount of kids that would go to the Chase tent just for Barry was insane because he's obviously done a great job being personable on YouTube, letting people into his life, helping people, and yeah, I feel like his social
yeah,
media game is very good. Or
yeah,
and Neeks is very good as well. Neeks just obviously been busy with a kid and stuff lately, but he's very good at doing all that as well as being one of the top in the world.
yeah. Certainly a rider we'd like to see back. So we're looking at Isaac, Joris, Barry, and who was the skills rider?
Josh Jolly.
Josh Jolly. Right. Okay. So we
Yeah.
blend all those riders together, and we get the ultimate BMXer in your estimation. That's an interesting one,
I
definitely.
think so.
Yeah. I'm going to ask everybody that question from now on because the amount of answers that we could probably get out of it could, it's easier than just going, who's the GOAT? We can just go, who's the Frankenstein? It just make it so much
Yeah.
easier. So,
And that's
yeah,
it.
that
And
could,
it's like even with that question, it's like you could almost go Yoris for the first three, but then
yeah,
not for social media.
no, he's
Although
a little
he's
bit
getting
shy in
better
that
now.
respect.
Now that Jackson's filming everything for him, he's definitely getting better at it. But he could definitely be the first three.
Yeah, definitely. I would be inclined to agree on that. I'd have to pick other people though, just for variety more than anything else.
Yeah.
So, as we come to the end of this, Jayce, firstly, thank you for coming on. I've really appreciated it. Is there anybody out there that you want to thank? Sponsors, family, friends, whoever it want to be, your opportunity, give them a shout out while you've got the chance.
Definitely just want to thank all my sponsors and everyone that supports me. Like my main ones being Speedco in BMX and then Cube Bikes in mountain biking, and then plus all my gear sponsors, Thrive, like Bell Helmets, and everyone else that's on my jersey. And then definitely my family have been super supportive my whole career since I started racing bikes, moving into coaching, social media. They've had my back through everything. I want to thank Jackson, who's beside me. He's definitely been a huge help with all his filming and media, and he's always helped out a ton with not overcharging me. But yeah, just like everyone that's helped along the way, my club especially, Hintsland, they give me full access to the track to kind of do whatever I want, train whenever I need, train riders whenever they need, and they've always been super helpful. So, and then everyone that I coach, I would like to thank them for trusting me and taking on my advice and knowledge, and yeah, giving me people to share it with, and
Okay.
everyone that watches my YouTube.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Have you got any last words of wisdom for any young BMXers out there? If you were given to give them one piece of advice, what would it be?
um, don't take life too seriously because at the end of the day, none of it matters, and make sure you just enjoy riding your bike and have fun because that's how all your skills will be developed, and taking it serious at a young age will bite you when you grow
Okay.
up. Taking
Brilliant.
it too
So,
serious.
yeah, ride your bike. Don't take it too seriously too early and enjoy it. Fantastic.
And then
Right.
advice for the parents, lay off your kids a bit. Let them enjoy it.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Brilliant. Oh, you're coming out with all the philosophical bombs at the minute. This is gold. So,
It's
yeah.
just stuff I deal with on a daily basis.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. Right. Well, I think that's a great place to wrap it up. Jayce Cunning, thank you so much for coming on the BMX Commentator podcast. I will continue to watch your YouTube content. I'll continue to follow your career. Thank you for being a guest. It's been absolutely awesome. Thanks so much.
No, thank you for having me on and inviting me. That was awesome, and it was nice to meet you. Hopefully, I
Yeah.
get to see you again one day in person.
Yeah, hopefully we'll meet at a World Cup or a World Championships or something like that, and I'm sure we'll have a proper good chat then as well.
For sure. I was saying before when you came on, it feels like I'm watching a World Cup because I've never put a face to your voice when I watch World Cups, and now hearing it, I'm like, that's who I'm
Yeah,
talking to.
brilliant, awesome, right, great stuff,
No,
mate. Well, thank you again, and yeah, just look forward to seeing what the rest of your career holds.
awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks, mate.
Bye.